the media needs to be sent a message that you cannot target a particular community. We are trying to build a nation which is inclusive, diverse, cohesive, which respects the fact that it is a melting pot of so many different cultures. A very, very important message this from Justice DY Chandrachud of the Supreme Court, which came, in fact, in a case which actually deals with something which is one of the most controversial and serious challenges we've seen to this very idea of India as an inclusive nation in recent times. Now, what was this all about? A few weeks ago, you might have heard about Sudarshan News, Suresh Chavhanke, his channel, where he was going to be doing a show on Naukarshahi Jihad or UPSC Jihad, where he was going to be doing a grand expose on how there's a conspiracy by Muslims to infiltrate the bureaucracy. The promo of this show, of the series of shows, created such a controversy that there were attempts and petitions filed in the Delhi High Court and the Supreme Court to prevent its broadcast. Now, back then, at the end of August, the Supreme Court declined to grant a pre-broadcast injunction. The Delhi High Court initially put a stay on the show and said that this cannot be broadcast till we can be sure that it's not going to violate the program code. But eventually left it to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, the INB Ministry, to take a call. The INB Ministry late last week allowed this show to be broadcast. They said we can't really impose a prior restraint, a pre-broadcast injunction. Sudarshan News is assuring us that their show will not violate the program code, including the provisions on not doing something which is contemptuous and demonizing a particular community or which has fake facts and false news, and therefore we're going to allow this broadcast to go ahead. However, when from starting last Friday, when Sudarshan News actually started putting out its episodes on this issue, a lot more concerns came to the fore. Petition, the same case which had been filed in the Supreme Court, which was now being taken up for hearing on the bigger picture issues that sort of balancing freedom of speech with hate speech which attacks and targets a particular community. This whole issue came now back to the Supreme Court to actually consider whether or not an injunction should be granted. And on the 15th of September, the Supreme Court said, actually the circumstances have changed from what we've seen now of these 4 episodes, what we're being shown of these 4 episodes. This looks like prima facie an attempt to vilify the Muslim community, and that too using palpably erroneous facts. On that basis, they said, the other 6 episodes of the show cannot be broadcast till we give you the go-ahead. We're going to have to look into this issue now. So that was on the 15th of September. Sudarshan News was obviously given an opportunity to argue why this injunction shouldn't exist and to defend what it was doing on its shows. And that's what happened on the 18th of September in the Supreme Court when we got these comments then from the court about the responsibilities of the media. Now, to quickly go through what Sudarshan News's defense is, they say we are doing fact-based journalism. We have evidence to back up all our claims. We have found that there is an organization called the Zakat Foundation of India, which provides help to young Muslims who are trying to apply for the UPSC. And we've now found that actually the Zakat Foundation is getting funding and has links to organizations which have, there are problems with it. There's concerns about them being linked to terrorist organizations, to Zakir Naik and other sort of anti-national things. And therefore, there's a matter of public interest here which we were trying to bring out. So they said what we've done is protected by freedom of speech. The courts don't have a power to impose prior restraint here. They should allow us to put out our broadcast. If there's any violation of the law, then we can face the consequences as required. Now, to this, however, Justice Chandrachud, Justice K.M. Joseph, and Justice Indu Malhotra had a lot of questions to ask because they've now had a chance to look through the episodes which have been broadcast. They've seen what has been pointed out by the petitioners and the interveners who've got problems with this whole show. And they said, that's not really the case, because let's look at, you say you want to investigate the Zakat Foundation. Sure, you're entitled to. You're entitled to do a show, talk about the public interest, all of that. But when you're kind of trying to defend yourself, you're sidelining the language and the kind of speech actually used by Chavhanke in his show. Because if you look at that, not only is just the tone and tenor problematic, look at the language he uses. He continuously others and demonizes the Muslim community as a whole, not just, individual issues. He uses caricatures, offensive, stereotypical caricatures of Muslims, showing them with beards and skull caps and big noses, wearing green shirts with green faces. You constantly have, when you're trying to show what are supposed to be facts and figures, you've got fires in the background, flames in the background. This isn't just kind of putting out your what you're trying to say about the show. So all of this put together shows that you're kind of targeting the community. You're saying that you're implying that this whole community is engaged in a conspiracy. And as Justice Chandrachud said, when you're doing that, that's not just, this is not just about free speech. Now you're moving on towards hatred. Justice K.M. Joseph, looking at again all of this, said that what you're doing here is, the bottom line is you're maligning a whole community. Now, on this basis, what the judges said was that, look, if you want to actually broadcast the rest of your show, you've got to, convince us that you're not going to be doing all of this problematic stuff going forward, that your shows are not going to be about hate speech. It's going to be actually about sort of this public interest point which you're making. Justice Chandrachud, he said, as I said, he said, with the targeting of community, the tarring of a community is where it goes from free speech to hatred. You are entitled to say that there is a foreign organization which has dubious funding, but to brand every member of a community as part of this conspiracy, that is a problem. He said, he also said that, look, we have a constitutional duty to protect human dignity, which is as important as our duty to protect freedom of speech. We respect the right of freedom of speech, but we are absolutely concerned about these kind of attacks against a community. So this is why now Sudarshan News is going to have to submit an affidavit to the court where they're going to have to set out how they're going to make sure that their shows do not cross a line. They do not have the kind of offensive content which was there in the shows, in the episodes which have been broadcast so far. And that's something which is going to happen over the weekend. On Monday, the court will resume hearings into all of this. They're going to now hear from the petitioners and the interveners who had asked for this whole broadcast to be stopped, to see what they have to say about whether or not the injunction can be lifted. Because Sudarshan News is saying, please lift the injunction you put on our show. Even if you want to look at these big picture issues of hate speech and regulation of self-regulation of the electronic media, you've got to let us keep doing our show. Now, the interveners and the petitioners will be arguing no. We've got Jamia students who are pointing out how this is sort of an attack against them. The initial promo, in fact, called them Jamia ke Jihadis and stuff and all. You've got seven retired bureaucrats have also filed a petition where they're talking about issues of hate speech and where something goes beyond, just freedom of speech. We've got the Press Council of India is going to be coming up with arguments on this issue as well. They're going to point to how the print media has kept itself generally quite, within bounds and restrained because of the code of conduct they have. And so essentially we're going to have to see whether or not the court can formulate some sort of way, a mechanism of self-regulation, which is actually enforceable and strong, which is going to stop TV channels from spreading this kind of hate. The central government, the News Broadcast Association will also be providing more arguments. So stay tuned to the Quint for all of those updates, which we will bring to you, and which we will be following this case not only about Sudarshan News, but also in general about whether the media's, how can the media stop itself from going from freedom of speech to hate speech when it comes to these kind of shows.